Hey guys, I just wanted to come back and give you guys a video before I'm gone for too long. Right now, my goal is to be on a med-surg unit when I graduate. I think my ultimate goal is to be an ICU nurse because I'm a very organized person. I like everything making sense. In the past, I've always wanted to do dialysis, so I predict me being a dialysis nurse probably like in another 10 years, maybe, who knows. But I am interested in that. But for the beginning, I do want med-surg experience. I want to work at a med-surg hospital or a med-surg unit on a hospital. And I'm excited about that because when I was 16, I lived in this tiny little town near San Antonio, and I actually, through the HOSA program in my high school, I was able to work at a hospital at 16 as a CNA, and it was a great experience. I worked on the med-surg unit, and I have mad respect for nurses on the med-surg floor because I saw firsthand, you know, I think people kind of feel like med-surg is so basic. A lot of the main issues that people have or things that just happen to people, they're gonna happen on the med-surg floor. You're gonna have heart problems, you're gonna have diabetes problems. You won't get serious patients, like serious disorders or diseases that'll, you know, kill a person per se. I mean, the ICU would get the most serious cases, but you see a lot of the normal day-to-day issues gone wrong. Like you see diabetes gone wrong, you see, you know, diseases that you haven't heard of. As I think back about that time, it was like a year that I worked on that floor. It makes me feel so good because I remember looking at the nurses as my role models, as, you know, goals, because of how they dealt with situations, and then they were always teaching me. I remember one nurse had to give a patient, put an NG tube in a patient, and she was like, "Come here, I'm gonna show you." And so she brought me in the back and she explained what was happening because I didn't know what an NG tube was. And so when we went in there, she had me like hold the cup and everything. Like I felt like I was really helping out. And so she had me hold the cup with the water for the man to drink, and she, like, you know, explained everything to him, but I was listening because I didn't know what was going on. And in the end, it was a great experience because I learned something and I saw how NG tubes were inserted. And every time I think of, you know, NG tubes, I think of that because it was my first experience with it, and I felt so comfortable in that experience as a CNA, and it was nothing I knew of. I remember so vividly all of the things that I learned when I was in that unit. So I feel like that's where it needs to begin for me. Like I will learn the basics, but I feel like I'm going to learn so much more. It is the foundation of the hospital, in my opinion, med-surg. So right now, I'm pretty much just on the road. So what really made me feel like, oh, I should go back to school was, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 months after I had gotten married. I was feeling like, why are my only options long-term care, home health, or clinic? As an LPN or an LVN, why are those my only options? Why am I limiting myself? Like, I've always wanted to work in a med-surg, or I've always wanted to be an ICU nurse. Why don't I just do it? And so that's when I started thinking, like, you know what, let me just research and see how much more schooling it takes. Because honestly, after I graduated nursing school, I never thought that I was gonna go back to school. Nursing school is pretty much like high school. And so I was done with it. I'm like, I cannot. I was so done with nursing school when it happened, so I could not imagine going back to school. I feel like it would be like another 3 or 4 years of the same mess, and I was not up for that. But over the years, I mean, it took years of people randomly telling me something like, you know, oh, it only took me this much this long to do this, or oh, it was the best thing I ever did, or oh, like I went and got my RN when I was this years old. It was 5 or it was 10 or sometimes like 15 years after I finished my LPN license. Like when people would tell me that stuff, I would just, file it in my head like, oh, okay, so they said it was kind of easy, or they said that they had a good experience, or they said that they waited this long but they still could do it and they still finished it and they were fine. That made me feel better, like maybe I can do it, like maybe waiting 5 years after graduation isn't that long. And so literally 5 years after graduation, I started researching it, and I was like, wow, okay, so I have 2 options, associates or bachelors right now, and there are LPN to associates bridges around me. Like there's a school, at the time I was living away from here, so the school was only 40 miles or something, 40 miles, and it was like less than an hour from where I lived. And I was like, well, maybe I can do that. And then I kept researching, and it was like 9 classes, and the credits weren't like, it wasn't like an abundant amount of credits I needed before the program. And I was like, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe this isn't that hard. Like maybe it isn't the huge mountain that I'm picturing it to be. In my mind, it was like 50 credits, total that I needed for prerequisites. But I mean, once I did all of the work, researching it, it's easy going back to school. And fortunately, a lot of times the government will help you go back to school, which is great. So I decided, I think it's time. I should go back to school. And so here I am. I am only in the first semester of my journey back, but I'm very determined. I got an A in my first class. I took an English class, and right now I'm taking the second English class, and I have 7 more classes, 4 of which I'm taking next semester starting next month in August. So I have 4, and then the remainder I'll take the next semester. So hopefully, if all goes well, I can start the associates program spring semester. Not this spring semester, this January, but next January. So I'm gonna have like a good semester off where I can just save up money, which is great. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'm so excited because I love nursing. I love learning. I love everything about, the nursing experience. But school makes me nervous. Testing makes me nervous. NCLEX makes me nervous. All of that makes me nervous, but I'm ready for it. Like I'm finally ready for it. I'm so glad. So tell me down below what kind of program you're in, if you're in nursing school or if you're an LPN